Hello and welcome. Thank you for coming to the North Seattle College Art Gallery's 15th lecture in our visiting lecture series. I'm Amanda Knowles, the coordinator of the NSC Art Gallery and printmaking and drawing instructor in the art department at North Seattle College. I'm pleased to work with Karen Stuhldreher, who assists in the gallery. She'll be working hard here behind the scenes, and I want to appreciate her and the work that she does for the gallery and has done all year. Everything is better because of Karen. We have live transcript available for those who want it. Those who don't want it and find it distracting, you can turn it off by clicking the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and selecting hide subtitle. Use it if you wish, hide it if you wish, but we want to make sure that it is there for those who need it. As we're not currently mounting shows in the art gallery and will not be until at least winter quarter 2022, we're working hard to be able to find ways to interact with artists and continue to have them come to talk with us and show us what they're working on. Today is the last lecture of the spring quarter. We plan to continue this lecture series in the fall quarter and beyond that. I urge you to visit our website for links to recordings of those who have spoken to date. And once they're booked, we will list fall's visiting artists there as well. If you have time over the summer, you might go back and look at all of the amazing people who have talked to us this year. I also urge you to visit our website to see the 2020-2021 North Seattle College Juried Student Art Exhibition. Also this Wednesday from 10 to 4, we hope that you will participate in our virtual spring art and craft sale, which highlights work from the North Seattle College students, alumni, faculty, and staff. We'll put all of those links in the chat. Thank you, Karen. So I will begin this lecture with some acknowledgements. First is our land acknowledgement. On behalf of North Seattle College, we acknowledge that we occupy the traditional ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Duwamish tribe, a people that are still here, continuing to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. Without them, we would not have access to this gathering, dialogue, and learning space. We ask that we take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land who are still here. Our second slide is a labor acknowledgement. We also pause to recognize and acknowledge the labor that created the United States and from which we all benefit. We remember that our nation is built on the labor of enslaved people who were forcibly brought to the United States from the African continent, and we recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We acknowledge immigrant labor and recognize that voluntary forced and prison labor contribute to the building and maintenance of our nation. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor. Additionally, we acknowledge the critical importance of uprisings for racial equity that continue across this country in response to racial injustice and generations of structural racism against BIPOC communities. Thank you. I will point out that the image that's on this slide is by Isaac Scott, who documented June's uprisings in Philadelphia, and it was one of our visiting artist lectures. Okay. Our last slide is what we're doing as we continue to work going from acknowledgement to deed. It is not enough just to acknowledge the land and labor. We have to be sure that we are taking action. We show you here what actions the art department and our institution are taking to support BIPOC individuals and institutions and to be held accountable. We recommend Real Rent Duwamish, and we will put the link in the chat for you to explore. Thank you. What a pleasure it is to introduce you to Paige Pedbon. We have been watching Paige's design as it has been developing at the north end of North Seattle College's campus for the mural. We are excited about this mural celebrating the land, plants, and animals of the region. The placement of this mural is important, welcoming people to the campus as they cross I-5 on the pedestrian bridge leading from the Sound Transit Center at the northeast corner of the campus. The Northgate stop opens in September of this year. Paige is an artist based in Tacoma, Washington, who incorporates her Indigenous culture in her work. She earned her Associates of Arts and Science degree from Tacoma Community College, woo, community colleges, as well as her Bachelor of Arts degree from, in the process, drumroll, Evergreen State College. Paige is a Lushootseed language learner, completing the certificate from the Lushootseed Language Institute at the University of Washington before returning as a co-instructor in the program. She identifies as Black, White, and Salish from the Confederated Salish and Kahutni tribes. As well as speaking with our own Dan Tarker, along with mural art teacher Kelda Martinson and student Maxine Cheney in North's own TLC Talk, in April, she was highlighted on Ken Volplante's podcast, Something Rather Than Nothing. Paige's art has been in several group and solo exhibitions, including the Yahoo Show at King Street Station, as well as exhibitions at the Columbia City Gallery, Tacoma Gallery, City of Tacoma, and others. She has been a vendor at the Yahoo Show Native Art Markets, Daybreak Star Cultural Center, and Indigo Studios in Tacoma. Paige is a painter, illustrator, jeweler, and so much more with a very broad practice. I will be handing you over to Paige, but before I do, I want to let the audience know that we'll be taking questions from the chat today. So if questions or comments arise during the talk, please write them in the chat and we will hopefully get to each one of them. We will be sending a transcript of the chat to Paige after the talk. So if you want to comment on the work and her words, please do. You might be specific about what you're commenting on, as Paige will be busy talking, not following the chat, and we'll see your words after the talk. But I urge you to support her in the chat. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us, Paige, and welcome.
Thank you. Hutch Slachel Togalabu. Paige Pedavon Seedstead, Salisha. Good day to you folks. My name is Paige. I'm Salish and I'm from Tacoma. And yeah, we could get started with the slideshow if you don't mind pulling that up for me, please. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to come listen to me talk. And thank you for having patience with us. And, I know sometimes my internet's a little bit spotty. So if you need me to repeat something, please let me know. All right, so this is a slideshow that I think shows some of the work that I've done in the last 2 years, and I hope that it gives you some insight to my studio practice. So a little bit about me. I see myself as a community artist. I hope that my imagery reflects my community, and I hope my work is something that my community can be proud of. And I am a Lushootseed learner and teacher. I like to incorporate Lushootseed in my work, as well as a culture carrier. I like to incorporate my culture in a way that is not exploitive, but representative. So this is the mural I created for the North Seattle College. I actually created 2 different murals, and this one came to me after talking with Kelda, and I wanted to explore both of the ideas I had. So as you can see, there is a split on the third on the right-hand side. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see why. Oh, maybe not the next slide. So there's a split on the wall that the mural is on, and that's why I wanted to incorporate it. Yeah, so this is it as a whole, and then I have some more clips of close-ups. So if we look at the frog is eating the moth, and if you look at the back of the frog's body, you'll see there's 2 moths that are reflected on the frog. And you can see the snake and the heron's swirling S neck. And these are Coast Salish elements that I used to create these designs. And then the otters, although you can't see the madrona tree branches are the same shape as the otter's body. And if you look at the otter on the left, you can see the shells in the stomach, and there's also a shell represented in the nose of the otters. And you see that there are fish in the heron on this side. And then the snake is looking at the ducks, and the ducks also are the same shape formed of the snake coiled on the cattail. And then in the stomach of the ducks, there's a little blade of grass. So these are all elements I wanted to incorporate where it shows how the cycle of life and how we're all interconnected. Okay, this is the slide I was talking about. So you can see this is a 3D model my partner made for me. He does 3D modeling. And I just love that, thinking about this work as a collaboration too, with the North Seattle art class, the students painted this on the wall. I was able to create the design, and my partner is able to help me by putting it in perspective so that those selecting the designs could see what it actually looks like on the wall. And I wanted to have the break in the wall to just have a little bit of like a different look on one side, on the other side. So there's a little bit of an element of surprise. I wanted to have the bright colors be more contemporary and to also challenge the traditional water motifs that are often found in the Pacific Northwest region. A lot of murals will have water life motifs, and they often stick with a very muted or blue color theme. And I wanted to just take it a little bit step further with its design. And I titled this piece Wetlands, and thinking about the place of the North Seattle College and paying homage to the land that it resides on. And I wanted people that are driving on the freeway and students on their way to class to be gravitated towards this image. So something you can see far away, but when you come closer, there's a little bit more of a surprise that, it grants you, a little bit of a surprise for coming up closer. And I want people to think about their relationship with their plant and animal relatives. And I was also thinking about the fluidity of time by having the day and night scene and being as ambiguous as it is. And just as a student, I know for me, you live in like two worlds of academia and then also just like your home life. And so I thought the wetlands was a perfect representation of that. We have the frog that is a master of the water and a master of the land, and otters as well. And so I wanted those elements of like, we can be masters of both worlds in this design, and paying homage to the plants. So the Madrona tree is a very prominent plant in the Pacific Northwest. Although the cedar tree is like the queen of all trees in this area, I didn't want to exclude the Madrona tree in this design. And cattails too. Cattails are a very important material used in traditional weaving and just utilitarian reasons for Coast Salish folks. This was the original design I had. It's basket tradition design. And I really like this design too. We have the 5 cedar tree, the yellow and red cedar tree lines to mark basket wefts. And then we have these designs that are traditional to Coast Salish basket making. And these are designs that also pay homage to plant and animal relatives, as well as celestial. So we have the morning star design, and we have a regular star design too. Starting from the left, we have fish gills, and then we have what is often animal feet. And these designs aren't 100% like set in stone. There is a fluidity to them too. Depending on what family you come from, these designs might mean something else, and they might vary from family to family. And then to the right of the feet is a star, and then we have mountains, and then the woolly dog, then more mountains, and then a dragonfly, or could be described as an eagle, depending on what family you're from, and then the morning star, and then we have waves and trees, and then we have the gradual steps, which is found in traditional basket weaving, wool weaving, and beadwork. And then we have some more steps too, which is a very common motif, and then it's repeated again. And that's what it looks like on a wall. And so, although this design wasn't picked for the North Seattle College, I was still able to recreate it, and I painted it as a mural for Mad Art Seattle Gallery. And the orientation that they wanted the mural was vertical instead of horizontal. And so I redesigned for the dimensions to be more complementary to this mural. And I think it turned out really good. I don't think it jeopardized the integrity of the original mural, and I was happy that I was able to use it. So I thought that was a good one. And you can see this at Mad Art too. It's still, I believe it's still hanging up right now. So being a community artist, this can be represented in so many different ways. And this is just one of the ways. My cousin Amber Hayward, she is the director for the Puyallup Tribal Language Department. And she is a strong advocate of incorporating art in Lushootseed and also gifting the community. So we created these yard signs with a couple other artists, and we incorporated Lushootseed. So this on the left, you can see that's my nephew. He was at school and they ran into him when they were putting these signs out. So I thought it was just like a super cute, picture, and just shows how what we do really ripples throughout the community. And he goes to the School of the Arts. And I just thought it's just really sweet to see these connections in the ways that they come out. And I don't know if you folks are familiar with the Tacoma Dome, but it's a prominent structure in Tacoma. And I have the image on the left, indigenizing Tacoma Dome by adding the gradual steps that are, it's a Salish motif. So I wanted to add that with the beautiful gradients of blue that the Tacoma Dome has. It is a very beautiful structure, and I really learn to appreciate it the older I get too, and seeing how it really complements the skyline in Tacoma. And the Lushootseed that I chose for this sign is Obob Kwahwalek Abalek, which means to be kind, be helpful, and to be sharing. And those are the three virtues of the Lushootseed culture. And so this is just a close-up of how I incorporate Lushootseed. I made this design, and then my cousin Amber asked me if I could redo the dimensions so that it could fit the standard yard signs. So I just think that it's really cool how, I can create something on my own and have something very true to myself, and it resonates with someone else, and they're able to use it for another purpose, and it goes beyond my intentions. And culture. So this is my nephew. This is my cousin Amber's son. His name is Amani. And this is a painting I made for the Stonington Gallery. They had an exhibition last year that was centered around the Salish Sea ecology. And I wanted to have my nephew, because this was his first time fishing, and it was a very impactful moment for him, a coming of age, if you will, and also being able to do what his ancestors did, and fishing on the banks of the Puyallup River, and the joy that he had of learning this skill, right, that his ancestors have done. And not only that, but also represent the diversity in our community, our Indigenous community. You know, we are not a monolith and we look different. And Amani, he is mixed race. He's Black, Mexican, and Puyallup. And one of the strongest things that I try to advocate for people is to stretch their thinking of what Indigenous looks like. And I try to do that with my work. And yeah, I think it's really important to have representation. And this is some work that I did with the city of Tacoma. They wanted to have 3 designs for the recycling bins: metal, cardboard, and glass. They're switching the way they do recycling. And so they wanted to have the public be have a better perception of this change. And so they handpicked a couple local artists, and they didn't realize, but I grew up in Browns Point, Dash Point area, and they picked me to make the designs for that area, which is pretty fitting because that's where I grew up. So I was really excited that, you know, my friends and family could actually use these recycling bins. So the top design is a traditional wool weaving design. And I wanted to have it be a very simple design, but still have the impact and know that the viewer will recognize that it is Indigenous, and these are traditional Salish designs. And then Dash Point and the lighthouse area is represented in the bottom 2. So being by the water, you know, we have the migration of salmon, and we have little seals and sea lions that are always poking their little heads up. And I wanted them to be represented here. And then also we have Canoe Journey every year. And I wanted to show that, you know, in the bottom piece, the canoes coming in, because the landing site for Puyallup is in the Port of Tacoma. And so looking at this, you could see like that's where they're going. And I wanted that to be represented because there isn't any imagery of that at this area. So I wanted to have that. And this is the designs in real life. So these are what the bins look like. And, you know, being an artist that works with others, you have to have a flexibility with your design because, you know, coming into real life, there's going to be doors, and there's going to be knobs, and there's going to be dents and angles that you may not have thought of in your original design. So you can see there's like a cardboard sign on the bottom left, and then the glass on the other one, and then the holes. So when doing this kind of work, you have to be a little bit open. And also with the mural, there's a couple different, you know, things that we couldn't move. We couldn't move like an outlet or a door, and had to keep it. So just being really flexible with like these designs, I think, is something to keep in mind when doing public art. Oh, and these are designs that, these are images I made for the house show. Last summer, I was in complete quarantine. I wasn't going anywhere. And I had, just like many people, you know, this sadness and angst pent up, and, you know, injustice with George Floyd and everything, and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And I felt like I couldn't really do much inside. And then Asia Tail from the house show reached out to me to make activist posters. And it was the perfect outlet for me because I needed an outlet, and this was my way to express how I felt and to have work that I do be put out there in this way, and to feel like I was being heard. And it's really awesome. I still see these posters pop up everywhere, and they've been on the East Coast and out of state, and I think they're getting a lot of good reception. And I think it's also something that the public is able to see themselves reflected in. Oh, and this is a design I made for Chief Leshai Schools, a drum and dance group. I was asked to make a design, and they wanted to have the drums and the raven, and to have a Koselish sign, and to have a shoot seed. It says, "Us asista qush ti chaledu ataswa twid," which is, they say the floor is like the world. And that is a mindset to put the students in. When we do practice our culture on the floor, we move on the floor as we do in life and in the world. And that is to be mindful and to be careful not to like drop anything or to be clumsy, and to be careful with the way you present your body, and to have good intentions with that. So I thought this was like a really sweet design and good lashutzi for the youth. These are two designs that I made for the Seattle Canoe Club. They wanted these signs for Indigenous Peoples Day, and they wanted to have something that resembled the posters I made for the house show in the protest posters. And so on the left, I have the Together We Rise, Resist, Reclaim, and something that represents people who are out there, who are activating groups of people and youth that are, putting themselves out there on the lines. But I also wanted to have representation of another form of activism, which is healing the community and thinking of our elders and how their wisdom heals our community, and their good medicine that they put out there, this knowledge, and how it's important to have these two together, and that activism isn't just one form, but it moves in many different forms, with all people showing their strengths and coming together. Oh, this was my Rhoda Show exhibition. This was at the moment where COVID hit, and we were still very not sure how to proceed. So it was my first solo exhibition. Well, I guess it wasn't solo because I incorporated my family, but it was a solo exhibition, and I decided as a curator to add my family because it is really important for me to have these barriers be broken down for people who I see as really important artists. I wanted to use my power in that way. And the Rhoda Show is a show that pays homage to my maternal grandmother. She is Salish, or was Salish, and an artist, and she had 10 kids. And the show was a reflection of just being a person who is in the community, a person who is working class, and a person who is an artist, and just showing how that manifests in these different ways. And these cradle boards, I made a cradle board for each of my aunties and uncles on my mother's side. So for the Native Action Network, they asked me to have art to activate Indigenous folks to go vote. And they had a few different slogans, and I picked this one: aunties, daughters, grandmas, mothers, nieces, cousins, sisters, we vote, because I tend to draw women a little bit more than men. And I wanted to have representation of all different regions. And so I was thinking, of the South, East, and then just also having representation of just, there's also people who, kind of are facilitators of intertribal, right? They were maybe relocated, their family was relocated from one region to another, but they're still Indigenous, even though they're not on the land that their people are from. So also having that be represented in this design as well. And they were able to make postcards and posters and refigure the women in different ways. And some of them they had just 4, and some of them they had all 7. But I thought it was like it was really fun to see these go out. And it's kind of a bummer too, because it's like kind of temporary, but I think they still have a pretty good impact. So also thinking about culture, how I incorporate culture in my work is with jewelry making. And the one on the left and right are baskets, berry baskets. And then in the middle, we have salmon egg earrings. And so it's just another example of how you can incorporate certain elements into a 3D form. And it's just really interesting how, like, you know, to be inspired by certain elements and then making wearable art with that. And activism earrings, right? So missing murdered Indigenous women have the highest rates of being missing or murdered in Indian country. And so I made these earrings, and then also Black Lives Matter earrings, because I think that, like being out there doing the good work, a lot of people, you know, they wear their activism too, and just thinking about like another form of that. So this was a request by an organization in Tacoma. It is an organization that focuses on the arts. It's called Alma Mater. They have a restaurant and a recording studio. They have like art studios, and they also have like a venue area. They're a pretty eclectic place, but they are going through a big transition. They used COVID as a time to reflect and make changes. Before COVID, you know, they looked at themselves as not being as incorporating like voices of people of color. And so I was asked to make a land acknowledgement. And so this was a design with the elements that the new owner of Alma Mater and I came up with. And then you can see how it morphed. So, you know, this is just an example of how, like, sometimes working with commissions, you have an original idea and then it ends up not looking like what you started out with. And I think that's some things are so true to what you start out with. It looks like a replica, and then some things can morph and change when collaborating with others and turn into something different. And I really like both of the designs, and I think they have a really good message too. And I think the last slide is next. This is, okay, so I have two paintings there. The one on the right is the painting I had for the Yahoo show on King Street Station. And I wanted to create something that from like afar, it looks like a Western master painting, but on further inspection, it's indigenized. And I have superimposed my face on one of the master Jan van Eyck's altarpiece, and I superimposed my face onto the Virgin Mary. And I just indigenized it by adding a Lashute prayer in the arches. And I have an origin story in a book that is traditional of Dokuibuth, which is the creator. And it's a creator's origin story. And then there's the salmon on the back wallpaper behind. There's Coast Salish salmon. And I wanted to have this piece be representing reclaiming spaces and reclaiming the art world and reclaiming language, and how that is wealth. Like all these shiny jewelry in the crown, like to me, that is wealth, reclaiming myself in spaces. And this piece ended up going to the Stonington Gallery, and it was the first piece that I sold there. And I'm just really happy how it turned out. And it really showed me, like, when I made this piece, it really showed me like how I'm able to stretch myself and go beyond my comfort zone. It was the most detailed piece I had done at that point, and I was surprised that I even did it. And then the painting on the left is of my friend Kayla Gayet. She's Hickory, Apache, Mexican, and Italian. She's a prominent figure in the community. She works for Highline School District as the native ed person. And she's just a phenomenal single mother. She teaches her son how to live in both the Western and Indigenous worlds. And she is a culture keeper. And so I painted this piece for the Stonington. They have this piece up right now. It is for their June exhibition that focuses on women who are culture keepers. And I thought that it was really also important to have the face paint of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and just thinking when we heal our community, we start with our women, because they are the ones that are the nurturers of the community and nurturers of culture. And that's how we can come from a place of healing too. So yeah, this is my last slide, and I would like to open up for questions. And if anyone would like to revisit a slide and talk about it, I'm very open to that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a great talk. Yay. Oh, so wonderful. There's just been a lot of like kudos in the chat, just amazing celebration of you and your work. Someone asked if both of the murals were done digitally, and yes, that's correct, right?
Yeah, they were both created in Adobe Illustrator.
We're going to wait for some other questions as well. I can read through some of these wonderful things as well. You're going to get it. And I also want to say that if anybody wants to unmute themselves, they can and ask questions. I will start by just sort of seeding things. My first question has nothing to do with questions, except that I saw my first river otter recently, and I just am just absolutely in love with the otter that's on that mural, because I've had this interaction with this river otter as it just swam past me. So super amazing. Very, very close.
Cute.
I was listening to your podcast, and you talk a lot about art as medicine, and I'd like to hear maybe a little bit more about that, because I think it's really very true, and just want to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I like to make things with my hands and like to figure things out. I wasn't the best learner in class, but I did have a desire to learn, but it wasn't in the ways that I was taught at school. So I figured things out through my hands, and I kind of went away from that when I was in high school a little bit. And then after high school, I kind of just fell off and wasn't living my best self. And then when I was 25, I was I could tell that I needed to heal from within and to make a dramatic change. So I decided to enroll back in school and to dedicate myself to being more creative and creating art. And through that, I was able to heal myself with that as my medicine. And I was able to develop a lot of myself through that. And when I started working at Chief Lachey Schools, I didn't really feel like I had much to offer, because I wasn't in a position of power in making policies. I wasn't in a position where I could, really bridge the gap of these students with their family and their education. But what I was able to offer was my knowledge in creation, and also to encourage students that they are capable and smart, and they can you could do a lot with just a pencil and piece of paper. You don't need everything to be an artist, and in whatever art form that they are interested in. I'm not a musician, but I definitely wanted to encourage students to think of imagery through words or music in whatever form that they are desired or would want to do. And I could see how powerful that was for them to see themselves in a different way in connecting with something that they're interested in. And, you know, I'm like a forever learner, but it kind of in my own terms, you know, and I think it's just, you have to find what you're interested in to grow. And that can be medicine and healing. And that's not just for youth too, but I when I worked at Chief High Schools, I saw that the youth needed that. But it's also for like my mom's generation, you know, and people my age, you know, it's sometimes we get caught up with all this other stuff and we don't really make time to create. And when we do, we feel good. So why don't we do it? You know, and it's like, so how to take about 5 minutes of your day to just sit with yourself and think about little actionable things that you can do for your creativity. And so I journal too. And I think it's really good. Like, I'm the worst at reflecting of what I've done. Like, I forget. It's like once I do it, it's like gone. So I think like these talks and, you know, talking with others, and when they ask me what I've done, it's like I try to keep track with my journal, because I will truly forget. Like, and making a resume too, like it's never been I'm just so forward thinking that I forget where I came from. So for me, like, to feel like I've actually made progress, I have to like sit and reflect on this. And so I also understand like other folks feel like they're just living right now. The bandwidth that they have is, you know, it's just very minimal. And so I try to broaden time for people in this way, where it's like your work's important and you can do a lot with a little, and don't set yourself up for these grandiose ideas like, oh, I'm going to make a full painting. It's like, sometimes it's just a little doodle, you know, and that's healing too. So I think it's just like changing our expectations of ourselves and what we can do. And you'll be surprised with just a little bit of progress, daily progress, how much of an impact that can make on your life.
Thank you so much for that. I need that. Probably most everybody, I have that same issue where I know I need to sit down, and instead of taking action immediately, I need to sit down and like kind of stew in it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I wanted to read this comment from Rose Buchanan. She writes, Paige, I had the honor to meet you in person during your introduction to Kelda Martinson's student artist painting the design on campus. I'm also mixed race, Black, Native, white, and your inclusive art is such a blessing for my heart and spirit. Your talents are inspiring, and our community is lucky to have you. Thankful for your beautiful work, powerful interpretations in all of your artwork.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice. Thank you. It really fills me up when people feel like they're represented, because that's like my whole like goal, is to have people feel like they're seen. And I know for me, like when I was at TCC, I was in the library all the time. And one day I just saw this painting, or this piece of art. And I looked at it and I was like, that's an Indigenous artist. I can tell. And then I looked and she was from the same tribe as me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt so seen. And it took a while for me to actually stop and pay attention and really look at it through a different lens. And it was funny because I went to TCC for like 4 or 5 years. It took me a long time. And it was just funny. I saw it and I didn't notice it until the very end. So yeah, it's just really nice. Like that, I have had that feeling before, and I know how good it feels, and I want to give that to others too.
Yeah, very, very amazing work. Are there other people who would like to share their voice live?
I just wanted to tell you that your work is really inspiring. I know you probably heard that a million times, but it was my first time seeing it today, and actually my first time seeing Indigenous work. It was pretty cool. I look forward to looking into the tribes of Seattle as I get more accustomed. Honestly, once this quarter is over with, I feel like I'm gonna really look into more things. But right now, you were my breakaway from my math exam and and my real end from jumping over a bridge. So thank you so much. And I have to leave because I have to go to class. But thank you.
Thank you so much for saying that. Good luck with your math.
Thank you.
I believe in you.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Bye. Oh, oh gosh, I remember my math exams.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm glad she was able to take away some time and hopefully was able to get something.
Yeah, absolutely got something from the amazing. I know that Cristobal just wrote for Together We Rise class. We know many of you need to head off. Please feel free to do so. Thank you for participating in the event. Just to let everybody who's not paying attention to the chat know that. I know Kelda has a, I don't know if you're gonna be able to share, but Kelda has a time lapse of the mural that she might want.
Awesome. Those are my favorite. Kelda be sending me like little time lapse videos, and every time I'm like, ah!
It's so fun just reporting to you, Paige. It's just, oh, I love it. I love the connection so much. All right, well, I will try to share. I don't have the whole time lapse strung together yet. Our friend and also painter Grant is helping us with that. I think Grant's in the room. Hey, Grant. Okay, while I figure this out, I can show you sort of some other. This one is from a little bit ago, so we're further along. But you'll get an idea. We move really fast.
Yeah, I was really drawn to the collaboration aspect of this call. I've never done a mural before on this like scale, so I've never really been drawn to calls for large murals. So it's really cool to actually create something to be done on this scale and have come to the college and talk to the class and see their good work.
Yeah, it's just been so fun. And I think just from my perspective, spending so much time with a design that has so much care in it, and it just feels like it spans generations in time with the way that Paige has honored like Salish designed sense and symbolism, and then the way that the students are all like bringing their lives and their experience and their stories to the work. And when the beauty in painting a mural is you can spend 4 or 5 hours just on a few square inches trying to solve it and really study it. And it's a level of meditation that I don't find an easy way to access otherwise. And so I think your work, Paige, your design, the thought you put into this call and our campus has just been an extreme gift. And I know that just emotionally, I feel so much better this quarter. Yeah, it's just so much thanks goes to you and the mural students for really, it feels like just such an uplifting experience. And so you talked about how designs ripple through communities, and that's certainly the case with this one.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And art is medicine, once again.
Yeah. Yeah, and what a good design to have after so much that we've gone through and this since COVID and everything, just we've got, our people have gone through a lot of grief and a lot of heartache and frustration, but it's a sign that we are moving forward and we're doing what we can in a good way and sticking together. Yeah. It's really good. I'm so happy to hear that. It's a form of meditation too. That's so good.
Catherine, do you want to say something?
I'll ask this quickly. Can you recommend a book that has the patterns that are part of your art and other Native American artists' art all in one book? Or can you recommend search word keywords or some way that I can find more? I've actually taken screenshots of, I should confess, of some of what you just showed, but I won't publish it on the internet. I just want to learn more Native American patterns.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's a lot of research that I get involved in. So books are good, but culture isn't fixed. It's like a growing thing. So also recognizing that some things may not hold true as it did then as it does now. But I would say that the best artist to really keep an eye on and to research is Sean Peterson, SHAUN, and then Peterson, PETERSON. He's a great Coast Salish artist. He does some pretty basic elements and describes why these elements are important and the history of that too. The Stonington, I think, has a couple books that they came out with that talk about regional art. And there is a difference between Coast Salish design and form line. Form line is more Alaskan tribes, and Coast Salish design is more traditional to this area. And we had story poles. We didn't have totem poles here. There's a bit of, and welcoming figures. So there's a bit of a difference, and there's a lot of histories. And I think there might be some, I can't really think of, Cascadia is a good book for all encompassing of like plants and seasonal and arts and such. But yeah, I think also, yeah, it's kind of hard to say like the best ones, but I think those are good places for you to start. And also looking at the Puyallup Tribal Language Department site, they have like language references that also might link to historical context. It's all holistic, right? Like language and culture and seasons also are a big part of art too. And the art, I think you get a better idea of the inspiration of art from that. So yeah, and then also just looking at like tribal websites and affiliations might be helpful for finding more accurate books to look into. That's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was a deep answer. Well done.
It's complicated too, because there's so much out there that isn't accurate, and then there are some accurate stuff, and there's a lot of research to do and before even putting stuff out. But Sean Peterson is definitely the best person to look into. He's very accurate.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Catherine,
I know you have someplace to be. I don't want to take your time, and I'm going to stop recording. I want to thank you once again so much for being here, for sharing yourself with us. We're just so pleased for it. So thank you.